In today's video, we're going to build another attack. This time it's this energy beam, which we will be using to build our boss battle, or you can use it just to build obstacles within the rooms in your game. Hi, my name is Michael. Welcome to my 2D action and adventure RPG tutorial series. Follow along and learn how to create your own ARPG in Godot 4 using GD script. All right. Hello again, everybody. So following with the energy orb video that I did last, we're now going to do a new one. This is going to be an energy beam. This energy beam scene that we're going to make is going to be probably less generally useful. You know, in other words, it's probably going to be mostly strictly useful for this boss fight, but you may find ways to use this or maybe learn some new concepts that you can apply to other things. And so let's go ahead and get started. You should have already grabbed the audio files that you'll need for this one. We're going to use this boss beam audio file. And then there's also a sprite, or two sprites, I should say. There's an energy beam and there's a energy beam large and a regular energy beam. We're going to use both of those. And so make sure you've got those. And if you need to grab them, download the wizard boss zip file and grab those assets and bring them into your project. And let's go ahead and create our scene. And we'll just call this energy beam. Okay, and we've got this empty scene here. Now our energy beam is going to consist of a few things, but I kind of want to just do one step at a time instead of laying everything out. So let's start with just adding a sprite 2D. And to describe how this is going to work, this energy beam is going to do kind of a smaller beam across, you know, the level. And you can just rotate it depending on the direction you want it to go. And the first beam will be kind of like an indicator. So it's not going to do any damage to the player, but it's going to be a warning that something's coming. So it'll kind of play this little animation and blink a couple times, and then the actual attack will happen. Okay, so let's start this first sprite then. Let's just go ahead and call this the energy indicator. Okay, or warning. You could call it either way would work. And what we want to do for this one is, if we're looking at our sprites, we just want this small energy beam. I'm going to click and drag this on here. Okay, so it should look something like that. It's pretty tiny. Okay, it's 32 pixels by 16. And we're going to adjust some of the settings on here. So one thing we're going to do is we're going to use a region. We're going to go ahead and enable the texture region. And the reason why we want to do this is because it's going to allow us to do kind of a scrolling effect. So when we come in here to edit the region, you can see we've got a box. You want to turn snapping mode to pixel snap if we're working with, I think, just about any texture. I wish that was on by default. Okay, so anyways, your region is going to occupy the entire texture. So you don't really need to do anything special there, but just make sure that it is set up. And then next we want to come down on our sprite 2D and find this texture section under the canvas item, and under repeat here we want to enable this. Okay, so I'm going to say enabled. What that's going to allow us to do is, if we now change our sprite region, the rectangle here, it's going to allow this to scroll. And so I'm going to type in 1024 on the X, and you can see now it's just repeating that texture zoom across that whole distance. Now I chose 1024 because that's plenty large to cover my screen width or height. Okay, but you can choose an appropriate number. If you need to make it longer, you can. And let's go ahead and just go to our scene here. Well, let's save the energy beam. And for fun, let's go ahead and add an energy beam. I've got my scene 04 in my dungeon. This is where the boss fight's going to be. So if I type in energy, there's the energy beam. And I'm just going to drag this down here. Okay. So let's go ahead and just place this a little bit off center, like so. Now, if we run this scene here, we've got these energy balls from the last tutorials that are going to hit us, and I'll leave them for just a second here. There we go. So you can see the beam here going across the screen. I'm going to go ahead and remove those energy orbs because we don't need them right now. But this energy beam looking pretty good. I'd like to go into it, and if you recall, if you were following along with the energy orb video, we did have a special material that we made for our textures. So I'm going to come down to the material section underneath this tab here, and I'm going to do just a quick load. We only have one material, that's this light material. And then if I save that and come back and run, now this energy beam is going to look nice and bright on top of the scene and looking good. I think the only thing is it can be underneath the player. Don't want that either. I mean, that's kind of cool. It might be good for some uses, but let's just go back to energy beam, grab the sprite, and then under ordering, we'll set the Z index to 1, test one more time. And there we go. Okay, so we've got the beginnings of this. Now we need to make this animate a little bit. And we're going to animate this in two ways. One way is we're going to programmatically animate the texture to pan in a direction, and so that'll give the energy kind of just a nice simple animation there. But then we'll also use the animation player later to create like that timed warning part of the animation. Okay, so let's actually start. Let's go back to our energy beam, and I want to create a new script that we can use. And so, okay, let's see, file system, let's go down here and let's open this energy beam in the file system. There we go. So if we go to the script folder here and let's create a new script, and I'm going to call this energy beam sprite. Okay. And I'm going to put this on the sprite 2D, not on the scene, but on the sprite 2D. All right. And what this script is going to do, we'll make it extend to sprite 2D. But all it's really going to do is cause this texture to pan. And I want to export one variable that we can use to control the speed of it. And so this can be a float. And we'll set it equal to 100 for now. And then I want to create another variable called rect to kind of keep track of the rect2, the rectangle that we use for this. This is going to be useful so that we can manipulate that. And so real quick in our ready function, let's go ahead and grab that. The rect will equal, or not self, but self dot region underscore rect right there. So that gives us a reference to that. And if we look at this region rect here, you can see that it's the region of the atlas texture to display. Region enabled must be true, which we have set it up that way. So this will work. So we come back in here to our process, and it's actually quite straightforward. So we're just going to say region rect. Now that we have a reference to that region rectangle, what we're going to do is we're just going to change it, or region rect dot position, I should say. Okay, so we're going to adjust the position. We'll say plus equals vector2, and it'll be speed times delta and 0. What this means is we're going to adjust the x coordinate here of the rectangle. So this x that's currently 0, but we're not going to adjust the y. That's going to stay 0. And so what this will look like, we've already applied this. Make sure you've dropped that script onto the energy sprite, and you can come to the scene and you can run it if you want. And we should see that it's panning. Okay. So now we've kind of animated that without having to do anything. Right? We don't need an animation player to do that animation. And in fact, it's a lot easier to animate it this way and keep it consistent. But there we go. We've got that. So the next step will be to, let's add our next piece of our energy beam. So this is the indicator. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this now that we've got it all configured, this texture. And I'm going to change the name from energy indicator to energy beam. And it's a sprite 2D. I'll get rid of that 2 on the end. And then we can change the texture here. So if we go back to our sprites and grab the energy beam large and drop it on here. Now that squished it into this small size because we have our region set up wrong. So let's edit the region. And whoop, what am I doing? There we go. Here it is. So this is what the large version of the energy beam looks like. So just go ahead and draw that on there if you need to. And if you duplicated it like I'm doing, then you will need to adjust this. Just make sure that that rectangle fits all the edges. Alternatively, you could just type in those numbers, the width and the height of the texture. Okay. And so this rectangle, let's do the same thing. Let's make our width 1024. And because we copied all of our other settings and it's repeating, it will repeat like that. Now, one difference is on this. Well, let's go ahead and run this and just see what this looks like real quick. Hold on. Save it. Yeah, let's run this. So now we'll have the large beam, but I don't want it to move that slow for the large beam because it's supposed to be high power, high energy. So I'm going to come here and change the speed to 400 on the large one. And then if we run that, there we go. So when the energy beam attack happens, it'll scroll quite quickly like that. Okay. Cool. We've got our two sprites. Now by default, we don't need our energy beam to show. So I'll turn that back off. And then let's add a few things in here. Let's add in our audio stream player 2D. And we're also going to need an animation player. And we'll add a hurt box as well so that this can damage the player. Right, we got to do Shift Control A for that one. There we go, hurt box. And then the hurt box needs a collision shape. And what we can do with this collision shape is, in fact, let's go ahead and turn our large beam back on for a second. So for the collision shape 2D, we can just make it a rectangle. Okay, and then let's adjust the size of this. I'm going to hold Alt while I'm dragging the end so it scales it proportionately. I'm not going to go all the way to the extents of the energy beam here. I'm going to leave a little bit of it that doesn't damage the player. And then I'm just going to come here and we can grab this and hold Alt and resize it. Or we could probably type it in. I don't know. So the size, we could say that's 1024. That'll match exactly. There we go. In fact, I might even decrease the size of this just a tiny bit. I'm not quite sure where. 48. Okay, I'm going to be kind of forgiving. And I'm going to give this that red color that I like to give to my damage dealing collision shapes. And then for this hurt box, this attack's going to be powerful. I'm going to increase the damage to 2. In the case of my game, that's going to be a full heart. And then by default, we can turn the monitoring off. But let's just test it once with the monitoring on and see how that goes. There we go. Boom. And because it's higher damage, the screen shake is a little bit bigger. And it only took 3 hits from the laser to kill the player. Okay, so looking good. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. Disable that. Disable or turn off the big sprite. And now we've got all the pieces in place that we need to kind of finish this energy beam. But the timing and how that happens is what we're going to use the animation player for. And that's a pretty important piece of this. So let's begin actually with just the default state of our beam. And actually what I want is I want to turn off the indicator sprite as well. So by default, our beam is going to be totally disabled. The collision shape will be turned off. Okay, so let's actually start here with this hurt box, and we'll just select our animation player. Let's make a new animation first, I guess. I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll call this default. Okay, and then I'm gonna go back to my hurt box, select it, and I'm gonna key the monitoring value to off. Okay, and we do want it to create that keyframe. And then I'm going to select each of these energy beam sprites, and the visibility is currently off. Let's go ahead and keyframe that. Okay, and back to this the larger energy beam. Find the visible value, keyframe that. Okay, so by default, now if we save this, and let's make the default animation the one that plays by default, so autoplay on load. So now when we come over here, this energy beam is invisible. So what we're going to do is we will trigger the energy beam using another script. Okay, and what that script is going to do is it's going to play an animation. So we'll make another animation that we'll call attack. So I'm going to go ahead and just say, well, let's duplicate the default and we'll call it attack. Now this animation needs to reverse some of these things, but we don't want to do it right away, right? Because we don't want the beam to immediately be able to damage the player, right? Because we're going to show the indicator first and then it'll be able to damage them. but we need to play a few animations in here. So what we'll do is let's increase the length of this animation to 4 seconds. That gives us plenty of time to work with. And I'm going to change the snapping to 0.1 seconds. Okay, and let's start with the energy indicator. So what we'll do with this one is it should become visible upon playing this animation. But we're also going to modulate it, okay? And so we will start, let's grab our energy beam, the indicator one, and let's come to the modulate, and we'll set it a keyframe with no alpha. And we'll key that. And then let's zoom in a little bit on this guy. I'm going to go to 0.3 seconds and I'm going to insert a key. And this one I'm going to change to be full white. Okay, so it's going to kind of do a blinking animation. So we'll go on and off a couple times. So I'm going to just select and copy both of those keyframes. And then let me go to 0.6 and paste, and 1.2 and paste. Okay, and then let me just go one more, paste those again. Oops, drag that over here, except I'm going to delete this last white frame. So right now the animation looks like this. 1, 2, 3, right? 3 blinks. And then where that 4th blink would be, or right here about, is where we will cause the energy beam to come on, the big one. Okay, so here we go. We've got this visible on, and then we can go ahead and copy this and paste it over here and turn it back to off. Okay, it's going to reset that. Then we will grab our large energy beam sprite and we'll come, let's go to right on the 2-second mark, and we'll insert a keyframe here and we'll make this one visible. Okay, so it's going to go boom. It's just going to pop on. Now this one we don't need to do the blinking animation, but what we do want to do is let's grab this sprite and let's key the modulate so that it's full brightness here. And then I'm going to go to about 3.3 or so. I'm going to insert a key so that it stays white that whole time, and then we'll fade it out. Yeah, let's fade it out at about 3.8 maybe. Insert another key, and then we'll turn the alpha on this one all the way down, like that. Okay, let's look at the animation. It'll go boom, and of course it's scrolling, right? We don't see the scrolling right now unless we make that script run in the editor, but there's no need to. And then what we can do is we can turn the visibility back off on this at that point. Then I want to grab, let's see, we need to play a sound effect, but we also need to enable the damage, so the hurtbox monitoring. Okay, by default, that's off. That's good. Let's go ahead and insert a keyframe as soon as it appears, and we'll turn the monitoring on. And then let's turn it off again right at the beginning of the fade. I think it's nice to be forgiving to the player. So if it starts to fade and then they walk into it, they shouldn't take damage. Okay. And then lastly, I think the last thing that we need to do with this animation is to add an audio stream playback track. So I'm going to click add track, audio playback track, and then we need to select what node's going to play the audio. That's this audio stream player 2D, of course. And then if we go to our file system and find the audio for this, that's going to be the boss beam. Just drag this over to our animation and plop it in right there. Let's preview it now with the sound. Nice. Okay. Pretty loud, intense sound effect. Now it said I had some keyframes outside. This is a warning that I get a lot with Godot 4.2 and onward. And it's driving me nuts because it just did that when we just played it. Found a key outside the animation range, but there isn't one. There must be a bug in detecting that. I'm really not sure why that's saying that, but there we go. We've got our attack animation. So let's finish up our script so that we can actually do that. Or let's do this real quick. Let's autoplay this one instead of default, and then let's just see what it looks like in the game. So now I'm going to just walk in front of it so it'll hit me. You see that it doesn't hurt me until it does the beam. Oh, except I think I got distracted finishing my animation. Let's go to the energy beam. and didn't turn this back off. I made the keyframe, but I didn't set the value to off. There we go. Okay, so that beam is pretty super powerful. Don't want to mess with it. But how's this going to work? Let's go back here and let's make this default the animation that it starts with. And then actually what I want to do is I want to go to reset, and I want to take this energy indicator, and I actually want this one to be visible on the reset and change the modulate. I'm actually not going to make it fully opaque, but just somewhere in the middle. And the reason I'm going to do this is so that when we come to other scenes and we place it, you'll be able to see it, okay? But then when we run it, it's going to go to the default animation, which doesn't show it, and so on. And so the next step, of course, is going to be for us to build the script to make this attack something that we can utilize. So let's go ahead and go into our file system, and let's just open the scripts folder, and let's create the script that we're going to use here. So new script, not new scene. Do as I say, not as I do. New script. We want to just call this script beam attack. Oh my goodness. I think I got it spelled right. No, I did not. That's a K at the end there. Okay, so beam attack. I'm going to, well, let's open the beam attack scene. There we go. Now we've got this script on here, and I'm going to give it a class name because we're going to access this later with our boss battle. So class name beam attack, and we can make this extend a node 2D. And we don't need to have any export variables on this for now, but let's go ahead and grab access to the different nodes that we're going to need. So we have an animation player, definitely need that. So I'm going to hold control and drag that in. We want access to our hurt box. Actually, you know what? We don't need that. Maybe just the animation player for now is the only thing we're going to access. And let's go ahead and remove our process. We shouldn't need that. And the ready function we will keep for now. But let's create a function that we're going to call attack. Very simple function. And this will just be used to initiate the beam attack. So what we'll do is we'll just grab our animation player and we're going to play the attack animation, right? And then what we can do is we're going to await the animation player. So the animation player.animation finished. Once that animation has finished, then we're going to play the default animation again. Okay. So anytime we call this attack function, it's going to play that animation, which is a whole sequence, right? If we recall, it does the blink and the blink and everything all in one. Okay. And then once it gets to that point where it just ended, it'll go back to default. So that's what that function's going to do. And let's do this. Let's make it so that we can use this outside of the boss. But what'll happen is once we get to the boss that we're building, during certain phases, he will call the attack, this attack function on each of these energy beams that he's going to use. Okay. But for now, so that we can utilize it, let's give it an option. So I'm going to say, I'm going to add an export variable. And we can call this export variable use timer, maybe. This will be a bool, and by default, it's going to be false. Okay, and then we'll have another export variable. And then we'll call this like time between attacks. Okay, and this will be a float, and we can set it equal to maybe 3 seconds. Okay, by default. And so what we will do is we will use these values so that you could drop one of these into a level and have it on a timer, and it'll just kind of keep going. Okay. So, and I'm doing this just on the fly. I did not prepare for this, but I figure this is a better way to build this feature for now, since we're not doing it. So what I would like to do is when we attack, we're going to have this timer function that we're going to have to run, right? So we'll just make another asynchronous function, and let's just call it attack delay. So what we can do within this function is we can await for the time that we have on this timer. So yeah, time between attacks, right? So let's just begin the function with an await. We will say await get tree dot create timer, and we'll put the time should be this time between attacks. Okay. Dot timeout. So anytime we call this attack delay, it's going to just do this delay, and then when that's done, we will call the attack function, just like that. Okay. And then what we can do here in our attack function, we'll say if use timer equals true, then we'll go ahead and call the attack delay again. So what that's going to do is this could call this, and then this eventually calls that, and it'll just go back and forth, up. And so all we really need to do to start out is, I'm just going to copy this line of code, or these two lines. If use timer equals true, call attack delay. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. Now when we come back to our scene, if we want this beam to be one that uses this, we'll just turn on the use timer, and we can run it. And after 3 seconds, we should see that beam pop up. There we go. And then it'll rest for 3 more seconds. So you could actually use this to make, like a room where you've got a trap that repeats, and, just change it and alter it however you see fit. And otherwise, we're going to use the version of this without the auto playback once we get into our boss battle. Although I notice I've got some bugs here. So we've got a misspelling on default. Boink. Okay, any other bugs? Any other bugs? Looking good, looking good. Let's go ahead and run this one more time, just make sure those bugs are cleared. They should be. Cool. There we go. So thank you everybody for following along. So we've built an energy orb attack. We've got our energy beam, or whatever I'm calling these things, because I think I keep changing the names. So next step is we're going to get in, I think, directly into the boss, and we'll utilize both of these to create this boss encounter that I'm building. So thank you for those of you who continue to follow along. I'm getting to the point where once we finish this boss, I'm going to probably continue to use this AARPG tutorial template, but I'm going to start branching off into other things. We've got requests for a quest system, which I've actually started working on. We've got requests for time of day and crafting, and all sorts of things related to these, and with the inventory system and other things like that. But I would also like to maybe branch out into some different genres as well, but that'll be coming down the road. But if you want to see what's coming and you want to have some say in what's coming, then comment below and subscribe to my channel. That's the best way, right, to see what's coming out. So again, thank you to everybody who's been following along, and as always, we'll see you next time.